Good morning, and thank you for joining us. My name is Tina Tebow, and I will be your moderator for this morning's Cabinet Outs. Go ahead, Premier.
Oh, I'm ready for who's up.
Premier, I just wondered whether, now that we've got an almost $1 billion deficit, how you see your government working its way out of that. What will guide you as you decide to live within these new restricted means, if you will?
Well, obviously, finding our way back through to get our economy back and moving will be our first step. How do we make strategic investments to create economic opportunities? Ministers and departments will have to continue to look at how do they best manage the resources that are in the department while delivering key programs. But it will be challenging. But it's not the first time that we've had, as a government, have had to deal with fiscal challenges. The good news this time is that we are on a solid foundation, that we continue to control costs. When you remove the COVID out of the equation, our overall costs have continued to remain consistent. And obviously we're seeing some positive signs in the revenue side, but it's a long ways to go for sure.
Are you going to start trying to get back to balance beginning next year? I realize it's probably a multi-year thing, but will that start as early as next year, or is that further down the road?
No, we'll be moving this year, continuing to look at how do we continue to lessen the size of the deficit, obviously. We're going to continue to work at ensuring that we, again, are delivering programs that we've committed to, but at the same time trying to control those costs of government.
But given COVID, have you changed your view of deficits at all in terms of this is the reality you're dealing with, and it looks like you're going to have deficits for a while, and it may well be a necessary measure?
I haven't changed my view on deficits, but the reality of it is COVID's here. So we as it's not unique to us, it's a global issue. Governments around the world are dealing with this challenge. The good news for us is coming into this pandemic, we had a solid foundation. We were controlling costs. We'd seen the economy was moving along. Our unemployment was at an all-time low. Population was at an all-time high. All of those things are still key indicators and still factors that we need to continue to work towards. We'll continue to be aggressive in immigration. Minister Caldwell will continue to have to go out and look for export markets for seafood products, continue to grow those. So it's really going back and focusing on those fundamental things that allowed us as a province to get the good fiscal position we were in, and we'll continue to do that.
How long do you think it will take to dig out of a hole this size?
At this point, we'll see what the recovery looks like. I mean, we're really, we're in the front end of that now. Part of it will depend on whether the second wave, what happens. All of those things will be critical, and we'll get a sense. We're seeing in some cases, we've seen some parts of our economy continue to thrive. Indications we'll get a chance to look at international students coming into Canada, coming into our province. Hopefully it won't be in the situation that people had expressed it to be in the beginning. We're seeing positive signs that enrollment numbers may be good. So all of those will be key indicators on what happens and how long it takes us to come out of there.
Did you assume it would be a decade-long project?
No, I don't believe it will be a decade-long project.
If key indicators improve, do you foresee any kind of radical surgery on the public service or programs to help you get back to where you need to be in your mind?
We'll be looking at all of that. And I think Minister Casey yesterday in her remarks said all of us are going to play a role in this. That means all of those in public sector are going to have to play a role too. It can't just be the private sector who will be the ones to put us back in a good fiscal position. We've been working with our partners to slow down the growth of the costs associated with delivering services to Nova Scotians, and we expect to continue on that path. And people need to understand, for 4 months there were many people in this province who lost their entire paycheck, while others were continued to be paid. And I think we need to be mindful of that. And as we try to recover, those same people who received those paychecks over the last 4 months, while others were not receiving any income, need to be part of the solution.
I just want to be clear, are you talking about job cuts, or are you talking about wage restraint here?
Well, I think we've demonstrated over the last number of years that we've been fair when it comes to the collective agreement process, paying what we could afford to pay in the increases. If the issue becomes that Labour wants to continue to fight for more and more that the province does not have the ability to pay, then obviously that would mean there would have to be fewer people. They're going to have to make that decision. And I look forward to continuing to work with them. I know that many of the people that I know that work in government have been grateful to be working over the last number of months, grateful for the fact that they've been able to supply for their families. And I think a moderate approach to this would ensure that everyone could stay working, but it has to be at a growth plan that the province can afford to pay.
The EU doesn't want to participate in the Northwood inquiry over concerns that anything they say is going to be held a secret. How do you respond to concerns about the secrecy of that process and people declining to participate, affecting the outcome for that reason?
Well, I heard the union president say he's not going to participate. I expect members who are working there will. They would want to ensure that we understand lessons learned, the recommendations from that committee were made public. And we want people to be able to come in and not feel like in the middle of a lawsuit that their words will be held against them. We want to make sure that we get to the bottom, and if there's improvements that need to be made, they'll be made. But if Mr. McLean decides that he's choosing not to do it, that is certainly his choice.
Why was nobody from your government there to meet the families yesterday as they marched?
Pardon?
Families of the Nova Scotia shooting. Why was nobody from your government there to meet them and participate in that march?
We've dealt with, I've spoke to every family at the beginning of this tragedy. Minister Fury was speaking to them before. I know Minister Casey, who represents that riding, is seeing members of those communities. This was an opportunity for those families to express their view. Oftentimes, whether I've been in opposition or government, I don't often participate in those. This is a chance for Nova Scotians to express their views outside of the political arena, and I appreciate what they were doing, and they've been garnering a tremendous amount of support from Nova Scotians, and Nova Scotians are supportive of the movement and the message that they have been delivering.
If the province supports a public inquiry into the mass shooting, I guess, why did you try to justify the decision to go with review?
Ultimately, what we wanted to make sure was that all levels of government are at the table to find the solutions and the answers to the questions that these families had. And we needed to make sure that we had everyone at the table. And we believed that review would deliver that with everyone who would agree to be at the table. The families have expressed a very different view, and we supported them, and we're happy that everyone now will be there for the inquiry.
We have time for 2 more questions before we go to the phone lines.
You told us that you're looking at the possibility of lifting travel restrictions with the rest of the country. It's pretty late in the tourism season for that to be much benefit, and tourism operators we've talked to have misgivings about it. I'm just wondering if you could sort of talk a bit about what's driving this move. Is it universities? Is it some other sector? At this particular time, what is the benefit of lifting those sorts of restrictions?
Well, I do believe there will be some benefit in the tourism sector. Not everyone would benefit from that. Some would. We also believe economically. We need to get back to moving our economy. People, it's not just people coming to this province to come to visit and see the beautiful places. They're coming actually to do transactions. So we have to get to the point where we're going to be living with COVID, and we can't continue to lock ourselves down. That's why it's critical that we continue to practice the public health protocols. We don't want to be in a position where we had to be like we were at the beginning of this, where we had to completely lock down certain parts of our economy until we got to the point where we were able to start practicing the protocols that Dr. Strang has put out. But we are going to have to start creating some economic initiatives that are taking place to help grow the economy.
Premier, what impact will it have if the president of the largest public sector union in the province is not part of the inquiry into what happened at Northwood?
That's a decision for him. Mr. McLean wasn't working at the facility. We believe those that have been working there and are working there will want to express their views and what they believe can do to improve it, and we look forward to seeing those recommendations.
Would you ever move though from a review to an inquiry when it comes to Northwood, especially where there is issues around secrecy and some families are calling for a more open process?
It's not a process that we're looking at. We're looking at the current one that's now under the Health Act, and I look forward to the recommendations that are coming out.
Do you have any concerns about New Brunswick possibly opening up to a portion of Quebec?
No, Premier Higgs had talked to us about that, talked to all of his fellow premiers in Atlantic Canada. It's in the Gaspé area where infection rate is low, that they'll be coming into his province, and I've supported that.
We'll now go to the phone lines for questions. Mike Gorman, your question for the Premier. Go ahead.
Thanks, Premier. Two, hopefully I can get. The first is Minister Casey talked yesterday about knowing that there are going to be more sectors that need help as it relates to COVID, and tourism is surely close to the top of that list. How close is your government to being in a position to announce some sort of support package for the industry, and how are you evaluating how large that might need to be?
There's still ongoing work with that, but I would expect Minister McClelland and his team will have more to say in the coming weeks.
And I just, if we go back to the Northwood thing for a second, I know you mentioned the concern that some people might have about their testimony somehow drawing them into a lawsuit, but Mr. McLean's concern wasn't related to being sued. Mr. McLean's concern was that if he relayed the concerns that he shared privately in public, that the Act allows a provision for him to be prosecuted for that. And I wonder, in the interest of trying to address what happened at Northwood and prevent it, why would it be problematic to have people who choose to share their testimony publicly be able to do so without fear of prosecution by the government?
Yeah, Mike, I didn't know that was the issue associated with that. I'll certainly take that back and have a look at it. I don't know. Mr. McLean has certainly never been shy about sharing his views, and I will certainly go back and ask that question about why that provision of the Act needs to be enforced. We may be able to allow anyone who wants to participate to make their own testimony public. We may be able to let that happen, but I'll get back to you on it. I didn't know that was the issue that he was facing with.
Next, we'll go to Mike McDonald from the Canadian Press. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. Regarding the public inquiry, Premier, on Tuesday, you said your government had, from the beginning, pushed Ottawa for a joint federal-provincial public inquiry into the mass shooting in April. If that's the case, why is it that neither you nor your Justice Minister ever stated that publicly until the very last minute on Tuesday?
Because it was critical for us, as I just said a few minutes ago, that we had all of the players at the table. As you know, we're doing an inquiry today in the province, the Desmond inquiry, that does not have the federal government there as an equal partner. They have standing, but any of the recommendations that would come out of that towards the national government are not, they don't have the capacity. As a matter of fact, the commissioner himself talked about the limitations. So we felt in the conversations with the national government that it was critical that we kept them at the table because those families deserve the answers to the questions that they have, many of which are related to federal agencies. We believe the review would achieve that. Families have obviously expressed a very different view, and we were pleased that the national government decided to join into the public inquiry.
Go ahead, Mike, if you have another question.
Yes, I do. On the Desmond inquiry, Premier, on Tuesday, you said that your government had wanted the Desmond inquiry to be a joint federal-provincial public inquiry. However, before the inquiry, in an exchange of letters between your Justice Minister and Medical Examiner Matthew Bowes, Mr. Furey never raised a joint inquiry as a possibility, even though Mr. Bowes said it would be a good idea. All Mr. Furey ever said to Mr. Bowes was, in essence, it's up to you. And as you know, the medical examiner can't call for a joint inquiry. So again, can you provide any proof that your government actually pushed for a joint inquiry into the Desmond case, as you claimed on Tuesday?
What I said on Tuesday was the fact the federal government was not involved as an equal partner in the Desmond inquiry meant that we could not enforce the federal issues. They would have to be at the table. They're there as a participant. Minister Fury only has the capacity to invoke a provincial inquiry. The national government would have to be willing to participate and call a federal inquiry, and that didn't happen. As you know, Mr. Bowes asked Minister Fury to deliver on the inquiry to Desmond, which we have, but even the Commissioner himself, in his opening remarks, laid out the limitations associated with dealing with the national government.
Next, we'll go to Jennifer Henderson from the Halifax Examiner. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Good afternoon, Premier. Can you tell us when Nova Scotia will open up to travelers from other provinces? The state of emergency is due to come off the 8th or 9th of August. Could we open up prior to that?
That has not been determined yet.
Go ahead if you have another question, Jennifer.
Yeah, how did the government come up with the number of media allowed in the room at one government place?
I didn't come up. I think the size of the room probably determined how many were going to be in it, but I didn't determine that.
Thanks, Premier. We'll come back to the room. Chris, did you have a question?
Yeah, just to touch on the second wave, the potential second wave. If there was one, and let's say it's as bad or perhaps a little bit worse, given how severe the economic blow was to our province, is your government willing to shut down the economy again? Or are you guys looking at perhaps alternative approaches to somehow keep it going while also curbing the spread?
Well, public health ultimately will be the lead when it comes to that. It's why it's critical that we take the steps to continue to do the public health protocols. It's why we issued the issue for masks tomorrow. We need Nova Scotians to participate to help slow down the spread of that virus. It's why our school plan is laid out that if we have an outbreak in certain parts of our school system, we can isolate it and close it down. Mr. Churchill talked about that. The same approach would be taken towards the economic piece. If we see an outbreak in a particular part of the province, we may be able to isolate that. The big difference this time than on a potential second wave than the first wave is there was really no public health protocols in place. We had to put a shock to the economy, so that people, first of all, to flatten the curve, and in this case, hold the virus at bay. And now slowly open up with the protocols. We need to continue to follow those protocols, and if we do so, we believe it'll help us to be able to isolate in different regions. Premier Higgs, and I said this before publicly, and I've said it to him personally, they did a great job in northern New Brunswick when the virus came in from Quebec, and they isolated there without shutting down their entire economy. It demonstrated that there is a path forward to be able to create some economic opportunities, while if the virus shows up, that we can isolate that, and as opposed to doing it to the entire province, we can do it to parts of it.
We have time for one more question. Go ahead.
In response to an interview that Shayna Luck, my colleague, has just done with Jason McLean, he used the word cover-up in reference to the Northwood review, and I wondered your thoughts of his use of the term. It looks like a cover-up.
It's Jason. What more can I say? We brought in people to be able to do and to find the answers that families want, and to ensure that we continue to provide that. But it's not helpful that the rhetoric starts. These are people's lives in the healthcare system we're trying to improve. We're getting independent people looking at it, and we'll continue to work with them to try to find the answers. If there's protocols need to be changed, we'll be more than happy to do so. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.